Bickley and Marotta Mornings. Arizona Sports. The local sports leader. Bickley Blast.
It takes the right NBA head coach to believe and invest in small ball, the positionless brand of basketball that spreads the floor, concedes rebounds, and turns guys like Draymond Green and Amari Stoudemire into starting centers. It is a dangerous proposition, but I think in Phoenix the time has come to give it a shot. Now, Eric Gordon seems to agree, but he's a little biased. I'm sure he'd love a starting assignment with more minutes and more shot attempts, as anybody would. But when done right, small ball lineups can be magical. We saw what happened when Mike D'Antoni asked for permission to go small in 04 and received the blessings of Jerry Colangelo. The result was a team that blew up the NBA and revolutionized the sport. It happened with Steph Curry's Warriors, and at times, Michael Jordan's Bulls were never better than when playing with Dennis Rodman at center and running other teams off the floor. Either way, we're coming to a fork in the road, folks. The Suns must decide whether this roster has what it takes to win a championship. Is time all they need? Should they capitalize on Grayson Allen's breakthrough season and trade him at peak value? Or maybe the trick is in the presentation, as in something dramatically different like Small Ball 2024, where whiplash becomes our weapon, where we all buckle up and hope for the best. All right, today's Bickley Blast brought to you by my great friends at Chapman BMW, who make luxury attainable. Find them online at chapmanbmw.com.
The coach always has an opportunity to change the game with what's happening in terms of why they got a lead. So, we looked at the small lineup. We're going to go 5 3-point shooters. But J.O. was making some real quality energy plays, so we kept him in there a little longer. But finally got Eric in there, and he hit some big threes. And all those guys really stepped up. So I'm proud of how our guys stayed together and stayed in the fight.
You just mentioned obviously going small and having 5 shooters out there. You feel like that was the biggest reason for the comeback?
Yes.
Frank Vogel, Tuesday night after the...
Yes. No doubt about that.
In a word?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Not just making the move, you got to give credit to the players.
Oh, of course.
It wasn't just the decision to go small. The players have to buy into it, and Kevin Durant certainly bought in on the defensive end on a tough defensive assignment against Domantas Sabonis. I'll respectfully disagree to a point with you.
Okay.
This is something now I think that Frank Vogel can feel comfortable with in terms of sprinkling in, going to when it's needed, changing the complexion of a game, stopping runs, changing the energy. But, I mean, let's use Friday night, for example. Suns are in New Orleans. You want Kevin Durant banging with Jonas Valanciunas for 35 minutes?
No, not necessarily. No, you really don't. Nope. Listen, look, I'm not saying there's not downsides to it, man. There's risks in everything. And I'm not saying there aren't dangers and downsides in all of this, but in listening to Eric Gordon with Burns and Gamble yesterday, he seemed to be really into this idea. And again, certainly he's biased because that would mean a even more prominent role for him. But there are instances, and I don't know whether this group of 5 players that we saw on the floor in the fourth quarter against the Kings, whether you could do this on a sustained basis. But if Eric Gordon is a player seems to think that this might be the answer, well, now I'm even more interested.
Yeah, here was Eric Gordon with Burns and Gambo yesterday on the small ball lineup, creating mismatches all over.
It can be. If we play somewhat similar style like we did last night, yeah, we might not be able to match up one-on-one all the time, but you got to throw different coverages like at Jokic. But other than that, who is he going to guard?
Right, they can't switch fast enough on you guys with your ball movement.
Yeah, and that's why, it was a perfect example. Sabonis on that team, he was trying to figure out who he was going to guard, and we were trying to put him in the pick and roll so we can spread out the floor.
Yeah, it's intriguing. And you bring up the Jokic thing, and Eric Gordon comes on the flip side of it and says, well, who's he going to guard when we go small? There's intrigue there. There's no doubt about it. I'm still very much of the belief that this has got to be a change-up as opposed to the fastball that you're leaning on for 80% of a game.
Again, and I would like to see this, just explore this and to see if you might have magic in a bottle, if you will, or lightning in a bottle. So
and I'm wondering,
we'll disagree on this, and that's fine. but I do think that at the root of it all, what Eric Gordon is saying is at the crux of small ball lineups. It's going to expose you defensively, but you're going to make the other team just as uncomfortable defensively. And then it becomes this idea of who is better being uncomfortable. Who can hang in the madness and the chaos better? Who feels more at home in that kind of element? And if you go back to the 04-05 team, it's the Suns, what they didn't have defensively, it didn't matter after a while. Now, it mattered when you got up against the San Antonio Spurs, and that turned out to be their kryptonite. And the small ball era that indeed revolutionized the NBA didn't bring us a championship. Mm-hmm. So in the zero-sum game, you'd have a hard time saying that small ball was a great idea for those basketball teams, but it was a heck of a lot of fun to watch.
Sure.
And they were a dominant basketball team. And if that lineup gave you a quarter as riveting as they just did against the Kings, why not give it a shot?
Yeah, I think it makes Frank Vogel certainly more agreeable to give it a shot at times of the game. But then again, you're marginalizing the good things that Jusuf Nurkic can do for you. And he does do a lot of good things. He's the leading rebounder on this basketball team. In a more traditional setup with him at the 5, he can exploit defenses with his vision and his passing ability. So those things go out the window. But Frank Vogel was steadfast in that, hey, going small, that enabled that comeback last night. It's not going to work out that well every single time. You go five smaller guys that can all shoot the basketball, the ball still needs to go in. It went in on Tuesday night. It went in to a degree where they overcame a 22-point lead. So I think we'll definitely see it sprinkled in. Mm-hmm. Because Frank Vogel has shown this, too, and mostly out of necessity, for a lot of the bench guys who have struggled to find consistent roles on this team, they don't have a lot of leash. We saw it with Yuta Watanabe. We saw it with Keita Bates-Diop. We've seen it at times with Chimezie Metu and Jordan Goodwin. Those guys come in. If they're playing well, they're going to be in the rotation. If they're not, he's got no problem putting them on the end of the bench and relegating them to sweat duty for a full night. So he's gonna go with what's working, and it worked last time out. So maybe we'll see some of it sprinkled in tomorrow night against the Pelicans. And can neutralize Valanciunas for stretches, too. Because Valanciunas does have a lot of success against the Suns.
And again, in my vision of it all, it isn't about neutralizing anything. It is about taking to the fight, taking the fight to the opponent and creating something incredibly special about yourself. And that's the whole thing. What can you do with the names on this roster and this basketball team to make them special? To make them special enough where they can win playoff series and advance in a playoff tree. That's the trick.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's kind of a shift in thinking for a lot of Suns fans, too, because I think one of the weaknesses of Monty Williams, especially toward the end of his tenure as the head coach of the Suns, he wasn't one of those coaches that was going to exploit. He was always reacting to what everybody else did.
Yes.
So it's kind of a shift in the mindset, and it might be uncomfortable for some. But I get what you're saying. And if they sprinkle it in and have some success, maybe we'll see it used a little bit more.
Okay.
But it was a heck of a lot of fun to watch the other night, I'll tell you that much.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.